As David Beer at the Libertarian Cato Institute writes, that would bar DACA recipients from staying at home to take care of children or retiring. A separate section of the bill would make immigration violations crimes instead of civil offenses. Taken together, it means that poor DACA recipients would be treated as criminals. Gregory Chen, the Director of Government Relations at the American Immigration Lawyers Association, says the criminal provisions would affect dreamers who initially qualify for protection but then lose their job and fail to meet the income requirements. But DACA is not really Goodlatte's focus. The first 386 pages of the bill would, among other things, reduce legal immigration by 38%. That would be achieved by ending the diversity visa lottery for people from countries with low immigration rates to the United States and blocking U.S. citizens from sponsoring their siblings and adult children for green cards. It would produce the largest immigration cuts since the United States blocked large numbers of Asian, Jewish, and Southern European immigrants in the 1920s. Other provisions would fund Trump's border wall, make it significantly harder to claim asylum in the United States, and allow asylum seekers who arrive at the southern border to be sent to Mexico, even if they are from other countries. Excuse me. Before the White House introduced its own immigration framework in January, Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen said the bill reflects many of the policy principles and priorities identified by DHS's frontline personnel, which the administration has advocated for this past year. The Republican Study Committee, which includes more than 150 House Republicans, called Goodlatte's bill the framework for immigration reform, adding that it opposes any process for a DACA solution that favors a backroom deal with Democrats over regular order in the House. The Republican Study Committee has not weighed in since Trump proposed citizenship for dreamers, but its usual allies on immigration have. Mark Krikorian, the head of the Anti-Immigration Center for Immigration Studies, called Trump's approach the art of the choke. The right-wing news site Breitbart favored Amnesty Don. Dan Stein, the president of the Populist Nationalist Federation for American Immigration Reform, accused Trump of offering a massive amnesty vehicle. He urged Trump to take up the Securing America's Future Act instead. Both Trump's compromise and Goodlatte's bill stand no chance in the Senate, where at least 9 Democratic votes are needed to pass an immigration bill. But the criticism from the right still matters. Excuse me. Immigrant advocates are hoping Congress will add a Dreamer compromise onto a spending bill that includes conservative priorities like increased defense spending. Even if the Senate succeeds with that approach, Bryan would likely have to defy many of his fellow Republicans by letting Democrats provide the votes needed to get a majority in the House. In 2013, bipartisan immigration reform passed the Senate with 68 votes before going nowhere among House Republicans who were opposed to citizenship for undocumented immigrants or fearful of being labeled pro-amnesty in a primary. Like his predecessor, John Boehner, Ryan will likely be guided by how much compromise his colleagues on the right will tolerate. So let's think about this for a second. Immigrants, there are millions of them, many millions of immigrants here in the United States. Generally, what is being discussed, or what was discussed not that long ago, was this, oh, well, what is it about illegal that you don't understand kind of attitude towards immigrants? Like, okay, immigrants are one thing, illegal immigrants are something else. They shouldn't be there here. They are inherently criminal because they have done something illegal, i.e. coming here without inspection, without signing the right paperwork and dotting the right I's and crossing the right T's and being accepted by those who set the criteria of citizenship. So that was throughout the election and the campaigns prior to that. That was the dynamic. Since then, somehow, the goalposts, so to speak, to use a sports metaphor, have moved significantly. They have moved, let's continue with the sports metaphor, the goalposts have moved all the way to the 50-yard line. Now, it's no longer about who's here legally and who isn't. It's about immigrants generally across the board. Suddenly it's, well, we can't let all these people come in. So we've reduced the number of refugees that we allow in down to a pitiful number. And with bills like this, or let's take Trump. So we'll take him as the halfway mark between the Trump of the election season, who was anti-illegal immigrant, that kind of thinking then, to the Trump of now, which is, well, let's allow these dreamers to become citizens, but everybody else, we have to cut down on all the people that are coming in, all the way over to Goodlette's bill, which is we're not going to turn dreamers into citizens. We're just going to let them be this permanent, or permanent as long as they can afford to pay for it, $1,000 every 3 years. How would you like that bill? Just to reapply, just to keep your legal status. And then you have to hope that you don't ever lose your job, or something like that happens to you, or you become disabled or anything, or you want to retire. No, you can't. I'm nearing what could be called retirement age. If in this scenario, I would be fine right now, but if I were to retire, I would be deported. So you could live here, potentially, if you could afford that $1,000 reinstatement fee every so often. You could go your entire life here, never becoming a citizen, because that's not allowed according to this, and then be deported once you retire. So it's like indentured servitude for people only because they don't have the proper citizenship papers. They are not citizens. That's the only reason. They haven't done anything wrong. In fact, as dreamers, they are sort of the cream of the crop in terms of people who have been vetted, who've been looked at, who fulfill all these different, categories of goodness and wonderfulness as members of society. According to this bill, they would be allowed to be basically indentured servants to the economy. As long as they're making money and producing this stuff, that's fine. No child care, tax credits, no health care, nothing like that. Oh no, that's not for people like you. That's for real people, citizens. So is there any logic to that? No, none whatsoever. There is nothing about the status of these people, of dreamers, that would indicate that they deserve to be treated like that, other than they just don't fit these people's criteria for what makes a decent, a normal, a full human being, someone who's fully human. So you're only partially human because you're not a citizen, and therefore, we can treat you any way we want, and we're going to treat you like crap. And then cutting out the visa lottery program, reducing family migration, or so-called chain migration, as they like to call it these days. That's all about reducing the number of people coming in to this country, period. Just across the board. Doesn't matter who they are or anything else about them. It's just saying, no, we don't want you. We want to be able to pick and choose who gets to come in. And I'm sure people who are willing to pay some huge amount, or say, well, I'm an entrepreneur, I've got $10 million, I'm willing to invest that. Sure, come to the front of the line. You can come in. You're fine. You're welcome. But everybody else, no. So it's just a bizarre and frankly nonsensical way of looking at things. But that's how far the goalpost has moved. This is now what a lot of people are calling the reasonable approach. Trump calls his approach the middle ground. So the middle ground has somehow moved to, let's build a wall, let's employ an entire army along the border to basically kill people who try to circumvent the entrance procedures. And on top of that, let's just cut out pretty much all the different ways people come in here, leaving only a few avenues that we will pre-select to kind of define a certain kind of person that we're looking for. And for that, we will kindly allow these wonderful people who are citizens in every way except on paper, we will kindly allow them to stay here. And that is what Trump considers the middle ground. That's what he considers the starting point. So all of this, none of this would be possible, first of all, if it weren't for the need to protect dreamers from deportation, which that crisis was created by, guess who? You guessed it, Trump and Republicans. They created the crisis for why DACA people and in particular and dreamers generally are now threatened by deportation. They created that by canceling DACA. And they have further ensured that it stays a crisis by not being willing to do anything about it until now. Next month is when it ends, when they're done. And something needs to be done by then. So now they're saying, well, I'd be happy to do something. Here's my list of demands. That is a full-fledged hostage crisis. That's what we've got going on in the country right now. And that is a political maneuver, a political choice. Currently, right now, there is a bill proposed by John McCain. Here we go. I'll read that real quick to you. John McCain and Christopher Coons from Delaware. Sorry, I'm getting hoarse. This is from the Washington Post. Two senators are eager to see Congress start crossing items off its long to-do list, introduced a bipartisan plan Monday designed to settle two of the more pressing parts of the immigration debate and let lawmakers move on to other issues. Senator John McCain and Christopher Coons formally introduced a bill that would grant permanent legal status to undocumented immigrants known as Dreamers and start bolstering security along the U.S.-Mexico border. But the measure would not immediately authorize spending the $25 billion President Trump is seeking to fortify the border with new wall and fence construction. Some Republicans are seeking at least $30 billion. The McCain-Coons plan also would grant legal status to Dreamers who have been in the country since 2013. A larger pool of undocumented immigrants than the 1.8 million Trump supports legalizing. The bill says nothing about curbing family-based legal migration or making changes to the diversity lottery program, two other priorities for Trump and conservative Republicans. Coons told reporters Monday that he has not heard from top congressional leaders about his proposal and that he considers it one of several proposals that could earn a vote. Coons said that a broader solution introduced by Senators Richard Durbin, I'm drunk, sorry, and Lindsey Graham is one possible compromise for senators to support, but added that he is also conscious of the fact that there's very little time left before the March 5th deadline to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. Coons said that Trump's unconstructive engagement with Durbin and Graham on the issue means their bill may not be feasible. Trump, Durbin, and Graham clashed in an Oval Office meeting last month when the president dismissed some of their potential proposals and labeled some African nations in Haiti as, I won't say it here, S-hole countries, just to be polite to the FCC, comments that roiled Washington for several days and contributed to a partial government shutdown. Coons said his proposal with McCain could be a fresh start and a strong starting place for the Senate's upcoming debate. In a statement, McCain said the bill would address the most urgent priorities of legalizing the status of Dreamers and make changes to border security and allow Congress to move on. Quote, "It's time we end the gridlock so we can quickly move on to completing a long-term budget agreement that provides our men and women in uniform the support they deserve." The new legislation comes as Congress has 4 days to meet another short-term spending deadline at 12:01 a.m. Friday. Immigrants have been a dominant subject of the month-long talks to set new federal spending levels, as Democrats have insisted on enacting changes in immigration policy to win their support ever since Trump announced plans in September to end the DACA program. The program is scheduled to end March 5th, although members of both parties think that an ongoing federal court case that challenged Trump's decision could keep the program operating for at least a few more months if Congress does not act. Trump, however, appeared to stand firm on his demands to fund the wall as part of any DACA legislation. Quote, "Any deal on DACA that does not include strong, in all capitals, border security and the desperately needed wall is a total waste of time," he tweeted Monday. "March 5th is rapidly approaching and the Dems seem not to care about DACA. Make a deal." Yeah. A 3-day partial government shutdown last month was forced in part by Democrats who withheld support for a short-term spending plan until Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell agreed to allow votes on immigration legislation if a compromise can't be included as part of the next short-term spending bill. Negotiators in both parties in both chambers are still working on a potential plan and are expected to continue doing so this week. Durbin, a lead Democratic negotiator on immigration policy, said there is not likely to be a DACA deal this week. He told CNN's State of the Union on Sunday, "I don't see a government shutdown coming, but I do see a promise by Senator McConnell excuse me, to finally bring this critical issue that affects the lives of hundreds of thousands of people in America, finally bringing it to a full debate. That's what we were looking for when there was a shutdown. We've achieved that goal. We're moving forward." Whether the McCain-Coons bill could pass the Senate is unclear, but it is nearly identical to legislation already introduced in the House with wide support. The USA Act, introduced by Representatives Will Hurd of Texas and Pete Aguilar of California, has 54 co-sponsors, 27 members from each party, and has been the subject of conversations between Trump administration officials and senior congressional leaders trying to sort out the contours of a potential immigration debate. But conservative lawmakers and some administration officials already consider the plan insufficient because it wouldn't do more to boost security along the southern border. Like the House version, the new Senate bill calls for the use of drones and other technology to establish better situational awareness and operational control of the border. Rather than immediately spending the billions of dollars Trump is seeking for new wall and fencing construction, the legislation would require the Secretary of Homeland Security to submit to Congress a new southern border security strategy within a year of the bill's passage. That plan would need to include a list of known physical barriers, levees, technologies, tools, and other devices that can be used to achieve and maintain situational awareness and operational control along the southern border, and a projected cost per mile for any changes. While reaching a deal cannot come soon enough for America's service members, the current political reality demands bipartisan cooperation to address the impending expiration of the DACA program and secure the southern border, McCain said. Coons added that the bill doesn't solve every immigration issue, but it does address the two most pressing problems we face: protecting DACA recipients, and securing the border. McCain is chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee and a leading defense hawk who is furious about the slow pace of negotiations on increased federal spending levels. Supporters of increased military spending in both parties want Congress to enact a budget plan so the Pentagon can work on long-term planning. McCain has stage 4 brain cancer and has been absent from Washington since before Christmas. He is not expected to be on Capitol Hill this week. Sponsoring this immigration measure is a stark departure from McCain's aggressive stance on border security. During his 2010 re-election campaign, he vowed to, quote, complete the danged fence across Arizona's span with Mexico. In 2013, he was a lead GOP negotiator on a bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform plan that passed overwhelmingly in the Senate, but fizzled in the House. Coons is a relative newcomer to the years-long fight over immigration policy, but he has been an eager participant in recent bipartisan talks to end a partial government shutdown and broker a compromise on immigration policy. News of the new McCain-Coons bill was first reported by the Wall Street Journal. So, there you have a very simple, very basic, and a fairly simple, I just said that, a fairly sensible, is what I meant to say, bipartisan immigration plan. It solves two problems. One, it takes care of Dreamers and DACA and all those people and says, okay, you're dealt with. We don't have to worry about you anymore. You're taken care of. You're going to be okay. It puts off dealing with the other millions of immigrants who are here who are without documentation. It basically says, we're not going to deal with that right now. That is something that has to be done at some point. We can argue over that, but that's a separate issue. It makes that a separate issue. And then it takes border security and all the people who think, oh, our problem is we just don't have a secure enough border. And it says, okay, we will study what is needed and then we'll deal with it. That's sensible. I can agree with that. I mean, I don't think we need more border security. I think we have lots and lots and lots of it. And I think that's a waste of money. But I am willing, for the sake of people who think we do need more, I'm willing to let somebody take a look at that issue and make decisions and say, all right, here's what we have. Here's where the weaknesses are. That makes sense. Anything that assumes something beyond that is a problem before it even starts. And anything that does not deal with Dreamers generally and DACA recipients specifically is a problem because it's ignoring an issue that is now desperate and urgent because of this artificial drop-dead date that Trump created. And anything that conflates undocumented persons generally with Dreamers and DACA recipients particularly muddies the issue because these are two different groups. Yes, they're all undocumented. Yes, it is a problem and it should all be dealt with, but it is a separate problem in the sense that Dreamers in general are basically de facto citizens of the United States. Immigrants who came here and made the decision to come here are not. Many of them are and many of them aren't, but there are different groups with different situations that can be dealt with differently. So there's a difference. You have this large pool of people with different stories who need to be understood and dealt with in different ways. And then you have this one specific group, Dreamers, who has a consistent story in terms of having basically grown up here. Now, I know there are people who will disagree with that and will say, no, you're dividing, you're turning them against each other. I'm not intending to turn anybody against anybody else. I'm just saying that you can easily make an across-the-board thing and say Dreamers are okay. A-okay by me. They should go straight to some kind of protected status. do not pass go, do not collect $200 or whatever, or monopoly thing. I mean, you can make this blanket statement about dreamers, which is harder to make about undocumented people across the board because of the differences in their situation. It's a complex thing, and depending on how you define citizenship, how you define all sorts of different things, is where all these other people fit in. Whereas dreamers are just, oh, okay, they're already here. They've been here. They grew up here. They didn't make a choice to come here because they weren't adults when that decision was made. So that was made for them. They are not guilty of whatever it is you think undocumented immigrants in general are guilty of. Dreamers are, you're removing that guilt from them. They don't fit that category. That's all I'm saying. They're a different category because the one thing that you can say that against undocumented immigrants, i.e., you broke the law and you should have known better, and therefore you shouldn't just get a free pass. If that is your way of thinking, you can't say that about dreamers. Well, you can, and people do, but you can't, with intellectual honesty, say that about dreamers. That's the only distinction I'm making. They are a different class of immigrants because of that one fact. So any deal on immigration, any negotiations on immigration, any kind of dealing with immigration should start with dreamers automatically get in. They're fine. All right. From here, we can then start talking about immigrants generally, undocumented immigrants generally, and border security, and what that means, what the needs are, where the line should be drawn, who gets to decide that, how it's decided. All those questions, that seems to me part of a phase 2. Phase 1, protect dreamers, take care of them. Take that off the board, and that's done. Phase 2, start thinking about what all those other things are and find some point that everybody can agree on. That's how I would do it if I were in charge, and that's how I would recommend it to our government. I'm sorry I didn't really get, I see that I'm out of time. I didn't really get into the meat of what I wanted to talk about, but consider this the beginnings of a discussion on politics and immigration and how all this stuff works together and is being used and misused, and where we are right now. Because any politician that is playing politics with the lives of immigrants is okay. I won't say it. I had a whole bunch of words going through my head there, and none of them I felt like I could say on the radio. So, and by the way, I don't think that the Democrats, by allowing the government to shut down over the DACA situation, was playing politics. It's not the same thing. They were just saying, hey, you said this was going to be dealt with. Nobody has done anything about this. If you want us to vote on something, you have to promise to move forward with this. And they got that promise, and we'll see where it goes. Anyway, run out of time. Thanks for listening. CU Immigration here on WRFU LP Urbana 104.5 FM. I hope you'll join us next time. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.